He got a little pretty mouth, ain't he?
That's the truth.
You're going to do some praying for me, boy. And you better pray good.
Hey folks, it's the Blind Guy here, and I'm back with another good old movie recommendation. And on this episode, we're taking a look at 1972's Deliverance, which if you have not seen it, I'm sure you've heard this. Yeah, that's where that comes from, is the movie Deliverance. I'm not sure if there is a movie besides maybe Jaws that has a musical cue that makes people think about it more than the movie Deliverance does.
Split folding rear seats for more cargo space?
Let's go, we're losing light.
An electric power steering. The Saturn View. Get in, get away.
So Deliverance is a 1972 rafting adventure-ish movie directed by John Boorman and written based off of the story written by James Dickey. And the movie focuses on four friends who have gone on a rafting, or it's more of a canoe trip, because they're going to go on a river that's going to eventually be dammed up. And as they progress down the river, chaos and thrills ensue. So I was going to shave for this review, and I decided, no, why would I shave for a review on the movie Deliverance? This movie has hillbillies in it. And yes, we're going to address the elephant in the room, or shall I say the banjo-plucking hillbilly in the room, is yes, this movie is famous for its depiction of a RAPE scene. And I'm not going to say the word because I don't want YouTube to come after me, but that's what the movie's famous for, is as the four men are traveling down the river, they are attacked and assaulted by a couple hillbillies. And the movie is interesting. Well, let's talk about that scene. So the scene features primarily Ned Beatty and Jon Voight are the two victims, and this is one of Ned Beatty's first major roles. And they decided they were only going to shoot the scene in one take because they didn't want to have to do it more than once. And actually, Burt Reynolds stepped in while the scene was being shot, saying that it crossed the line. And the director said, yes, I was hoping we would push it until you told me it crossed the line, so I knew where to stop. And although the scene does not actually directly show anything, to be honest, the way it is shot and the length of it and just how the actions are depicted it makes you uncomfortable. And I'm going to say that I actually think that's a good thing for this movie, because there's a payoff at the end of the scene that I don't think would be nearly as good if they didn't make you uncomfortable as long as they did. But the bit of a revenge payoff at the end does not feel forced, as I think it does in movies like The Patriot and Hostel. I think this one is very natural, and it makes you sit through that scene, so then at the end you can go, yes, at that. I'm not going to give away any spoilers other than there is a bit of a revenge element to the end of the scene. And the movie is really solid and interesting in the fact that it's told in what I would call first-person limited perspective, is the audience never knows any more than Jon Voight's character knows. So we are never shown anything that he is not aware of. We're never shown anything that he cannot see. And that leaves some unanswered questions at the end of the movie because he doesn't know. And I think that can be frustrating for some people when they're watching the movie, but I think it is fabulous because it leads to some discussion. You know, was that the same guy? Who was the guy that they ran into along the river? And I just think that's something that I don't see in movies very often. I've seen it in maybe some newer movies, but then they'll break it. All of a sudden, they'll break perspective. It's like they brought in a different writer, and he broke the perspective that the story is being told, and I think that ruins it. So It's very good for that. The acting in this movie is exceptional. You know, you have Burt Reynolds, John Voight, Ned Beatty, Randy Cox, and so the four of them together do a fabulous job. The two hillbillies do a fabulous job. One of the two hillbillies is actually a real hillbilly, for lack of a better term, and he had a pet squirrel and couldn't read and all that. He's the one without the teeth. And so I thought that was interesting. The other one actually learned how to hold his breath for up to 3 minutes, so that while they were shooting a scene, he had to be motionless during the scene, and he actually does it for up to 3 minutes. And so there is a scene in this movie after the RAPE scene where the group is having a debate as to how to proceed forward and what to do and what the right and wrong thing would be to do after that point. That scene is exceptionally well done. If you pay attention to how it is shot from character to character as they are making their points, almost like a 12 Angry Men style scene. But I think it's one of the strongest scenes in the entire movie. The only downside I would have to this movie is that it has a lot of rafting shots through rapids, canoeing through rapid shots. I think they were pretty proud of the fact that their actors did a lot of their own stunts and that they actually filmed this on a actual river, and so they shoot a lot of those shots. And I think it's a little bit overdone, not a terrible amount, but it could have been maybe a good 3 or 4 minutes cut out would have sped the story up a little bit. The dialogue is exceptionally well done. It's very realistic. It's funny at times. It's also, just like I said, it's what you would expect men under duress, what things they would actually say. And the other biggest strength I think this movie has are the character arcs that it has. So each of the characters has their own arc, and that's something that is not real common in movies, I think, today. In modern movies, it seems like they always follow the same arc. Somebody goes from not being good at something to then being good at something, and then going through a trial, maybe thinking they lost it, and then they gain it back at the end, that kind of thing. This has one character follows through that kind of arc, but the other ones all have their own interesting character arcs to it. So it's just fantastic in that regard. The contrast between Burt Reynolds' character and John Voight's character at the beginning of the movie, and then how there's a reversal by the end of the movie, I just love it. James Dickey actually wrote the original book, and he is in the movie. And as far as my dad is concerned, he should have won Best Actor over Marlon Brando that year for The Godfather.
You can act like a man! What's the matter with you?
Because for some reason, my dad is just enamored with James Dickey's performance as the sheriff in this movie. So check that out. Fun little trivia is James Dickey actually showed up drunk on set at one point and got into a fist fight with John Boorman, the director, and actually knocked a couple of his teeth out. And by the end of the movie, they actually were almost best friends. So that's how guys are, I guess. So I found that interesting that he didn't like the way it was being done, but I guess by the end of the movie, when he saw the final cut, he actually really did like what they did in telling his story. And yes, the movie is famous for its dueling banjos scene. That's what the song is called, even though one of them is a guitar, one of them is a banjo, which has always annoyed me because you'd think dueling banjos would be two banjos. I didn't realize the song was actually recorded years before the movie, and the movie just used that song in the movie, and it actually is the reason that song ever became popular. And so I found that interesting. Then it went through a lot of legal arguments as to who actually wrote the original song, and was it something that should have been in the public domain and all that. But Deliverance did make the song popular. I originally thought it was written for Deliverance. It was not. It was actually just something that had been around for a while. The movie has several areas of symbolism that I have a suspicion I understand, but I'm not sure if I do. So if you watch it, leave in the comments below what you think the meaning of, towards the end of the movie, where they have to stop when they're in town and wait for the church to get out of the way. They're actually moving the church because the town's going to be flooded. And then the digging up of all the bodies in the graveyard and moving those out of town. I feel like those, and maybe it's more obvious in the book, but I feel like those are symbolic and I have a hunch as to what they mean. But if you watch the movie and you think you know, let me know in the comments what you think about those two scenes in particular. A little fun trick to do is after you watch the movie, invite some friends over to watch it with you, and then during the famous hillbilly scene, go and get a Coke, and then come back and ask if you have actually missed anything. It's pretty fun to do that sometimes. Kind of mean, but fun. So I'm sure you're dying to know what my mom's thoughts were. So my dad and I approached my mom and said we could either watch The Sting or Deliverance, thinking she'd go for The Sting because she knew what Deliverance was about and she had seen it a long time ago. But she went for Deliverance, actually. So she called our bluff a little bit. And she really appreciates the revenge scene of the movie, and she also pointed out that towards the end, John Voight and Ned Beatty are wearing the same shirt. So leave it to your mom to always point out the little fashion faux pas that are in the movie. I think it's intentional. They have the exact same patterned shirt on, but I don't think I'd ever actually noticed it when I'd watched the movie. So thanks, Mom, for pointing that out. So those are my thoughts on 1972's Deliverance. It scores a 7.7 on IMDb. I think that's spot on. I think that's where I'd actually put it, 7.7. It's one that I have in my collection, and if you like these kinds of thriller-type suspense movies, I think you should have it in your collection as well. I've got a big announcement coming up for something that's pretty cool. It's not quite finished yet, but I'll let you guys know when it is. I think you guys will think it's pretty cool. So I really appreciate all your support, all the subscriptions. We're approaching that 500 mark, which is awesome. We can start doing some live streams. If you have some ideas for what we should do on our live streams, let me know. I can do trivia. We can talk about particular aspects of one movie, a genre of movies. We can do top 10 lists. Just let me know what you guys are thinking, and we'll definitely do that. We'll see you all on the next episode of A Blind Guy's View. Laters on the Menjay.
Latest on the Menjay.
Ships some bigger on the waves are skimming by, summits to the verdant plains. Each horizon is a new beginning, right?